Burgess here with Music Marketing TV. Today we are checking out the PSP DRC, or Dynamic Range Controller. It can do 4 types of dynamic processing, my favorite of which is upwards compression. It can do upwards compression, downwards compression, upwards expansion, downwards expansion. And the goal is to walk you through these modes so that when you use them, you have sort of an idea of what's going to happen, what you can bring up and bring down. And we're going to be using this drum loop to go after it. A lot of plugins, compressors, I don't know why, they just, or dynamic EQs do this a lot too. They just leave out the upwards mode. Upwards compression in particular is one I constantly want, and it's just not in there, and I constantly want it. We're going to be using this loop. And let's go ahead and dive right in. So there are 2 modes here. There's below mode, above mode, and there is a third mode, a linear mode, which can actually do both. It's kind of, I think of it as like a tilt style deal. Let's take a look here first at below mode. So below mode allows us to do things like upwards compression and downwards expansion. So what the heck are compression and expansion? Well, if we take a look here at our wave here, we have this like really soft thing here, and we have a very loud thing here. And this is called our dynamic range. So if the loud thing's here and the soft thing's here, a compressor shrinks the range. It compresses it. So if we have something that's too loud and we turn it down, we've compressed it to a teenier range. This is called downwards compression. And for this stuff, we want to look at loud things. So let's say that we've got a level that's like, oh, we look at stuff above this level. That's called our threshold. And so this is called downwards compression, and you're looking at things above a threshold. Now, let's say we have a level and we look at things below the threshold and we turn them up. So again, we shrink the range. This is called upwards compression. And this is why there is an above and a below mode. Now, the opposite can be true. Say we have a teenier dynamic range, we want to make it bigger. So we could have a level and we look at things above it. If it's loud, make it louder. This is called upwards expansion, because you're expanding the range. Now let's say we have our range, we have a level, our threshold, and we're looking below it, and we say, hey, if you're soft, get softer. That is called downwards expansion. And now if you turn stuff, let's say it drops below the level and you turn it down very quickly, like basically instantly, you get a gate. That's where gates come from. Gates, limiters, compressors, expanders. This thing can do it all, man. So let's take a look. There are some nuances here. Like, for example, we've got an attack and a release control. So how quickly should it turn stuff up or down? That's basically what these control. And then the ratio is how much. If it passes it, does it need to pass it a lot before we start really affecting it, turning it up or down? Or does it just need to pass it a little and immediately we start going after it? That's determined by the ratio. So if you have a high ratio, it's going to go after it like right away, a whole bunch. Well, not right away. It's going to go after it a whole bunch. How quickly it goes after it is determined by your attack release. I don't know. I have a picture of someone like sitting on a couch with like the doorbell rings with the pizza man. Your attack's how quickly you get up off the couch. Your dog probably has a faster attack time than you. But you have a greater ratio because you get to eat all the pizza. So once you finally do get the pizza, your dog gets like nothing. And, you know, you get a bunch. Or maybe you're nice to give your dog a bit. That's like the ratio. I don't know if that analogy helps you. Great. All right. So now let's go after it. We're going to set it in below mode to begin. And let's take a look here. So we've got our threshold. It's set very high. Let's go ahead and let's make it very low. So we have a very low threshold. And this means that nothing's really below it. It's pretty low. By the way, 0 is minus 20 dBFS. If you hover over it, it'll tell you. Hover here for a second. There you go. 0 minus 20 dBFS. So if you're looking at your meters in your DAW, that's what the 0 mark is. It's not 0 dBFS. That's why there's a whole plus side, which makes this a lot more useful, by the way. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to set this down at the minus 30 mark. So very, very little is softer than this. So if we take a look here, like the reverb tails, there might be like a reverb tail softer than this. It's pretty soft. So nothing's really going to happen. We're going to set it to compression. And so what this means is it's going to do upwards compression because it's looking at stuff below the threshold. It's going to start turning it up. And as I bring this threshold up, it's going to start pulling up. It's going to turn up these softer bits. And to show this, let's go ahead and record it while it's playing. So as I move it up, we'll begin to see them and we'll get a really squash sound, but things like reverb will first come up because that's the softest stuff. Then things like teeny transients. If you're doing this on your voice, you'll get mouth noises, things like that, maybe really low consonants. But it's a great way to bring the room up and emphasize these softer elements, which is why it kills me when it's not included as in plugins. Yeah, so now we're really going after it. And you can hear the verb now just completely takes over if we push this too far. Now you could rein this back by changing the ratio so it doesn't pull it up as much. Like how much it's pulled up by is going to be the ratio. We could change it by changing how quickly it's allowed to affect the sound. That's the attack and release. But when it comes to upwards compression, that's the general idea. We can see at the most extreme lengths things that are really teeny events. Here's the song jump. So this represents the start of this loop. Let's grab a constant of this loop. So here's a bit of this loop. We can see here this itty bitty event is that itty bitty uptick right there. This tiny, tiny thing. If we go after this one, this transient right here has been pulled up a whole bunch, and in general, the noise floor is just way higher now. So that's upwards compression. Great if you want to bring up the room, reverb, squash things, and you can bring down the mix and sort of do it in parallel. Now the opposite is expansion. So with this expansion very high, we'll go ahead and set it back up the way we had it. It's going to be turning on stuff that's soft. It's going to make it even softer, downwards expander. It's going to sound like this. We'll go ahead and stop it here. So you can see there are these gaps now in the sound. That's because this stuff that's soft, it's way below this threshold and it's turning it down at a ratio of 1 to 2. So it's going to be making it twice as soft, just softer. So it begins to really turn down. Now we could make this even choppier by, for example, making the attack and the release very quick. And it'll sound like this. Pretty close to a gate. So the only difference here is it's able to immediately go after what it's doing. This attack and release controls how quickly this is going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and double click these and reset them. So that's the below mode, and that's what's going on there. Let's go ahead and now take a look at the above mode. So more people are familiar with the above mode. The above mode is going to take down the transient peaks. And here, things like attack and release are going to play a much bigger role, especially with us in the peaking mode. So right, we have these different types of triggers. Right now I'm in peak mode. So as soon as it crosses that threshold in the direction we care about, it's going to start pumping away and start working. And we'll look at the attack and release here in a second. So I'm going to start actually by setting the threshold very high because we're in above mode. So anything above the threshold will trigger it. So if the threshold's really high, there's not very much above it. So it's not going to trigger very much. And as we bring it down, it's going to trigger more. Let's start with compression. So this is going to turn down stuff that's loud. It's going to start turning it down, downwards compression. Here's what it sounds like. So bringing this down. Now you see it's turning down stuff that's too loud and bringing it closer to how loud the softer stuff is. It's not touching the soft stuff, but it could be based on the attack and release. So if we make this attack shorter, you see how these like little peaks, they're suddenly gone? It's because the attack's much faster. If we bring the release down, it'll start releasing right away. And things like the verb that shouldn't be affected are now unaffected. If we make this very long, the verb could be affected now because a trigger happens, it's gonna attack, in this case, very quickly. And it's gonna take a long time to undo that attack. And so things that aren't really technically triggering the threshold that are actually below it will be affected by it. So it's a bit of a balancing act, finding a good envelope for what you wanna do. Again, I'm going to leave it at the defaults, but I just briefly wanted to show sort of how that works. And you can see sort of the sounds you get. And typically what you do is you apply makeup gain and bring the whole thing up after. So if we wanted to apply this sort of a little more reasonably, maybe we set it at a ratio of like 3 to 1. Let's go ahead and delete this. We'll hit record again, and we'll find a nice threshold that goes after these peaks and brings them down maybe to the level of this one. So as we lower the threshold, more is above it. So as you bring it up, it'll affect less. Maybe we don't want those attacks. Maybe we want it pretty squashed. And we can accomplish a pretty flat profile, which for things like voice is a lot of the times what you want. And this is great if you have peaks that are just out of control. You're going to want downwards compression, which is why it's probably the most common. But upwards compression has the benefit of not touching your peaks like this. And so if you want to maintain the punch of your sound, upwards compression could sometimes be the way to go. But it also comes with the caveat that you probably are going to affect the noise floor, and you typically don't want to bring that up if you don't have to, unless you've got like some stellar recordings or you're working with samples and it's really just 0 between the samples, or you're going after the noise, the reverb of the room tone. So there's different reasons why you might grab each one. I think downwards compression is maybe over grabbed because so many plugins support that out the gate. It's the first thing they give you, and I don't think it's always the best option. And then finally, we have our upwards expansion. So it's going to take loud bits, make them even louder. Now, this stuff's already basically maxed out, so it's going to already be pretty friggin' loud. But if we're going to set it high, and as we bring it down, stuff that's above this will be turned up even more. In this case, things like this will reach levels like this, and it's going to sound really, really sustained, in a way, squashed. So let's go ahead and hear it. You can already see we turned up to high heaven. So maybe not the call for this one, but you can see stuff like this immediately just starts jumping up into crazy territory. Upwards expansion, it's one that I don't really grab very often. And in the context of a multi-band scenario, you might use it more. But in a single band scenario like what we have here, maybe less grabbed. But anyways, that's the PSP DRC. Let me know what you think down below. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.